Pastor Everett Stroye, and I am the founder and one of the parishioners of God Kingdom's Heavenly Church. We are here this evening with Joshua's Journey, the Next Generation. What is Joshua's journey, and who is the next generation? Where men empower men, and where do men see God in the next generation? As we transition through the 21st century, what does the journey of Black African-American men mean to this country, and how do we navigate ourselves through, and where is God in all of it? I would ask that each and everyone introduce themselves and give just a little detail of who you are.
I would like to go first. My name is Barry Pinckney, born and raised in the South Ward of North New Jersey. Went to Malcolm X Shabazz High School, George Washington Carver Elementary School. Sports was my life growing up. And I'm a proud father to a 2-year-old baby boy. Thank you.
I'll go next, I guess. How y'all doing? My name is Christopher Lynch. I was raised in East Orange, New Jersey, born in Orange. Graduated from Cicely Tyson High School. It's a performing arts high school. Want to pursue my education further. Got an associate's degree through Raritan Community College, and currently pursuing my bachelor's degree at Rutgers Business University. And I'm a representative of the New Jersey STEP program and a facilitator for the TRHT program, working under Director Stroye.
Thanks, Chris and Barry. So I'll go. My name is Tariq Roland. I am from Elizabeth, New Jersey. I've been raised in Newark, Irvington, and Elizabeth growing up. I'm currently a project manager at Newark Sanitation. I'm also an academic counselor for the NJ STEP program, as well as an alumni, where I serve as an academic counselor for in Northern State for people who are pursuing higher education that are incarcerated. Kind of consider myself a community organizer. I'm also a lead facilitator for TRHT, working directly with and under Director Sharon Stroye. And I am a proud father of 6 children.
Wow.
Man, you know these fathers gonna come here and make me look bad, like I just wayward. Anyway, I'm Chris Randall. I'm a frequent contributor to God's Kingdom Heavenly Church. Also consider myself a member, the blessed godson of the pastor, which is the only reason I think he continues to put up with me. I've worked with students in debate in the city of Newark, also around the country, and I'm just excited for the conversation.
Okay, great. Well, Tyreek and Chris, I sent you an email and I sent you some questions as well. And you had a little description of what this is. Barry, I didn't have you at the time, and I didn't know that you were coming, but I will forward that to you if you would like to have it. And it gives a more detailed description of what Joshua's the next generation is. As African-American men, you are the next generation. How do you see God? And where do you see God within your lives?
Hey, Pastor, it'll help if you know who you want to ask directly first, so that we don't send so much uncomfortable silence.
Well, the question is put out there. Whoever wants to lead off, you can lead off. I don't have a special order because I'm talking to all men. I'm talking to 3 or 4 men. And so if you want to do this alphabetically, you can do it alphabetically. If you want to do it secretly, you can do it secretly. Okay?
I'll go, Pastor.
All right.
Repeat the question again.
As African-American men, how do you see God the next generation, and how is God in your life?
Okay. So I think that I'm credible enough to say this because I have my own personal connection and relationship with God, and I know who he is to me and what he's done for me. So if you hear this and you don't understand, please feel free to ask and I'll explain, because I'm not going to consider myself God, because I'm not. But I also consider that the God in me that I am working through, right? So like when you look at who Joshua was, he was tasked with succeeding Moses, right? And director Stroye, right, has been a phenomenal part of my life. And this is like, I don't think that I'm tasked with just being just some ordinary person, right? And matter of fact, let me not say ordinary. I just think that my God, our God, if we're talking about the same one, has a calling for me and a duty for me to fulfill. And that duty for me is to be able to liberate, educate, empower, and cultivate people from communities like mine, impoverished Black and Brown communities, but also bridge that gap and disconnect so other communities that's not like ours to be able to better understand. One of the toughest missions that I think that's probably going to ever have in my life. But I think that like God is amazing. When you look at, when you think about people from different walks of life and different lifestyle who have different beliefs and things like that, one of the few common things that we have outside of sports teams is our connection or relationship to God. And I think that if we use that source, then we can find, right, and work through our differences and help each other and love each other and do, the same thing that God told us to do, I think is in 2 Corinthians, right? The love chapter. So that's my part. Apologize if I rambled off.
I would like to go next. Yeah, I definitely would like you to send that information over too. I think this is a great question. I think Joshua, it's like the perfect name to be doing this in. And I say that because you said he was supposed to succeed Moses, right? And so I'm gonna just take this in a different direction of about what it means to me, because there was also this lady, right, who was like very near and dear to our people, and she reached back. And so when you think about what Tariq said, right, this lady, like, she's one of our ancestors who, like, she's the face for reaching back, sacrificing her own life. And it's Harriet Tubman, but her nickname was Moses. And so if you say I'm Joshua and my journey, right, I think like that it's to reach back. And Tariq is one of those people who I reach back with, and we do a lot of our work together. And what does God mean to me? I'm not the religious person, but like I very much believe in God. And I definitely think we're all connected through God. But God is everything, everywhere you look, everywhere you turn, everywhere you go, you know what I'm saying? Like that's God. Like, you might not feel that he's there at the time, depending on, your state of mind at the time. But it's like, if you just look at a tree, you know what I'm saying? Like that should be a reminder. And so for me, he's a constant, in my life, a little different than coming from like having a religion, but that's what God is to me.
I'll go next. So for me, how did I see God today? God is present every day in my life. First and foremost, I recognize He is steering the direction of my life. He's the source, God is the source of everything. He's all power, all knowing, all present. And just like Barry just explained, like the natural things in life that you can look at and marvel at just points you to a being greater than yourself. The tree, the wind, the ocean, mountains. Just look around the natural creation itself. So I'm not a religious person myself either. I'm more relationship. I grew up in the church, so that kind of sowed the seed. But just natural curiosity to things outside of myself, knowing what my limitations were and the marvelous things around me that I'm able to witness and admire, points me to nothing besides a creator greater than myself. So however people choose to see him, and I use the term the God of your own understanding. God is one. And we use the term love a lot, and a lot of people use it loosely, but God is love. So if you understand that, then we're all connected through that source of energy, that love. And for me, myself, I like to look at first when I'm looking at other people, new people, strangers, friends, family, myself. I like to look at the positive things first. That's what stands out to me naturally. What's wrong with today's people today is they're caught on their self-image and their judgments, that they suspend the positive outlook on people because they're trained to look at what's negative also of someone first. So God is present, even in those people's lives that cast judgment. He's present, but there's a lot of work to be done. You're muted.
Last but least, Chris Randall.
It's one of my least favorite questions probably ever asked, but I do think for me, I think that God is the source of all of the blessings of existence. And I think about what it means to just even be in this space right now with all of you, different ages, parents, different stories of life, backgrounds, thought processes, all of that, and being together in unity and having this conversation and what that means and how certain things are structured so that we don't have these kinds of conversations. And so for me, what the thing about God that I think strikes me the most is how God continues to facilitate things that we necessarily wouldn't be able to do ourselves. For me, I think that God is the source of the energy that we tap into in order for us to be able to navigate things in our lives on a micro and macro level, for our communities, for ourselves, for our families. And I also think God is the comforter when life becomes difficult and we don't really have the answers. So I think if I had to sum it up, I wouldn't say that there is a particular, much like Barry, I don't think there's a particular stance that I take about it theologically, but I do think that is the most important and relevant question of our time. And I also think that it's present, God's presence is visible in all things.
With that being said, in looking at the story of Joshua and Moses, as African-American men and the next generation, how do we determine what passing the mantle entails? Moses had a mantle, which was passed to Joshua. Elisha had a mantle which was passed to Elisha. What is a mantle? Tyreek, I'm going to start with you.
What's been my mantle or what is the mantle?
What is a mantle?
I would say an assignment, right? A task for me. You want me to expound on that?
No, you stop right there.
Okay.
Christopher Lynch. What is a mantle?
For me, the mantle was the responsibility to keep building upon what's already been laid and founded, the foundation that's been laid.
Okay. Barry. Okay, Chris Randall.
I think he may have to step away. I'll go next. I think a mantle is the legacy of particular tasks, goals, struggles. I think it is what it means to be connected to those things. And I think it's accepting the responsibility for keeping the fire burning on a particular goal.
Okay. The reason why I asked this question, there are very many variations of what a mantle is. But what the Bible says is the mantle is a covering, such as a cloak or an article of clothing. When Moses knew that it was time for him to be succeeded, he passed the covering and mantle to Joshua. As fathers and African-American men, Christopher, you said responsibility. Chris, you said legacy. Tyreek, I can't remember what you said.
I said an assignment or task.
Assignment. Okay. Your assignment to your children is to be a covering. Barry, what do you think is a mantle?
What do I think is a mantle?
Yes.
I don't know.
Okay. All right. That's cool. That's cool, because what we're looking at when we talk about the next generation, how are you covering the next generation, preparing them to understand who God is and what God means to each and every one of us in our lives? Now, I want you to think about this: assignment, responsibility, legacy, covering. As we move forward in this 21st century, what are we looking at in the next generation? Because I'm looking at the future Joshuas. What is Joshua within you? What is Elijah within you? What is Elisha in you?
I want to say for me that it's moving past all of the childhood things and coming into that role of responsibility, because what I'm observing today is a lot of childish activity, a lot of limelight activity, and things that would allow someone to sidestep responsibility. No one wants to be burdened with responsibility, because with responsibility comes accountability. no one wants to be held accountable for the things they do. They just act. So when you gain awareness, when you go through your life and you gain experiences, you start to learn how your actions aren't the only actions that that are enacted. And in fact, your actions affect those around you, no matter how big or small. So that's what I feel like Elijah, Elisha, and Joshua is today, coming into that realization that I have to do better than what I've been doing. I have to help build what's already laid down before me for those that come after me. I'll leave it there.
Okay. Tyreek.
I was writing down my notes. So can you just repeat that last part? Just the last part.
I can go next. I could go next. After you repeat it, I could go give him some time to think about it if you want.
Okay, let's give some time to think about it. Go, Barry.
I think he still need to hear the question though, the last part of the question.
What do you think? Okay, I can't repeat the question to you.
Don't worry about it.
But I'll put it another way. I'll put it another way for you.
I got you, Pastor. I got you, Pastor. I help you out. Tyreek, he said, what do you think a mantle is?
Huh?
He said, what do you think a mantle is? He
We
gave
already passed that.
No, not the mantle. So the question was,
African American men, I heard. I just want to make sure.
what do you think that it is to be an Elijah, Elisha, or an Elijah in today's society?
Right.
Gotcha. Okay, guys,
And
you want to go?
how do you
Mhm.
activate that in the next generation as African American men?
Gotcha. B, you want to go?
Yeah,
Go, B.
Oh, all right. So I would say, my biggest thing is always sacrifice. And I would say because it's like, and it's so crazy that that I'm going after Chris after what he just talked about is because it's like, growing up in the weekway section, like you always had to be fly, and things like that. And one of my main things is from an economic point of view is that like, I don't want my son to have to go through what I had to go through, right? But like, for me, it's bigger than that. I need my son to be grounded in something, right? That he can draw on when I'm not around. And for me, that's having an understanding of God. Like, for me, again, it doesn't necessarily like have to be, religion, but at least having an understanding of God, and I think making that sacrifice to constantly know like that, like when you're tired, as a parent, you still got to teach, because if you don't, then they learn it from somewhere else, and hopefully you're surrounded by a village where, everywhere they turn, it's knowledge, but that's like not, that's the perfect world, we live in reality, we talking right now and people are at war dying in other countries or like in neighborhoods that we used to be like, what I'm saying? This is the reality of it. Like, I can talk to him till I blue in the face, but he has to go to school. He has to leave, and so my thing is making that sacrifice to make sure that not that he has what I didn't have, but he knows what I didn't know. And I think the foundation of that, right, is like just having an understanding of like who he is as a person, who God is, and I think definitely the history of of humanity, you know. And I think that's what I'm tasked with. That's what I live for every day. But and also realizing that, like, you know, like, there's more of me to give than just to give to my son. And this is why we do the mentoring. This is why, you know, that when we tell them we want for you what we want for our kids, that, you know, we mean that, you know. And so I'll let Tariq go.
Thanks, Barry and Chris. Well, it's gonna be hard to even go after Barry and Chris, but so for me, it's letting my people, and I'm gonna stick with that, right? Like, it's letting them know, because we've been affected by so many, men and women, like, we've been affected by so many things that put us in this place to where we lost sight of our mantle, our task, our assignment, our purpose. Like we lost sight of the Joshua in us. So I want to help those who I come into contact with, you know what I mean? Or remind them that they can be used too, right? That they have an agenda, and that they can be the best version of themselves. I think I can go on, but I think it's mainly, man, just pouring into our people. And I remind myself of when I was, like, you know, struggling and giving up, thinking crazy, and, you know, just hurt, broken. And I was fortunate enough to have somebody remind me, right, or give me a mantle or a covering, right, and see that, hold up, no, I see something in you. God put me here, or somebody put me here to be able to get you back in alignment with what you need to do. So, brother, I'm here to help get you back in alignment, to be that man for you. And I'm not God, but I'm just here to do my assignment, right? To remind you. And the word that I would like to use is to empower, right? And I don't want to pass them, because I don't think that I got the authority to pass the mantle, but I just want to encourage them to pick their mantle back up.
Mr. Randall.
I don't know much about church, but in this part, we say that the doors of church are open and we come through, let our Christian experience, and we just move on. Can we just read the benediction right now? Because, I think for me, what all of this means, I mean, it's tough to kind of reconcile what I just heard, but Howard Thurman, one of my favorite writers, says that there's 3 hounds of hell: fear, hypocrisy, and hatred, right? And in the end, it's a question of, do we have the courage to do what we know is necessary, knowing that there's going to be stumbling blocks and mistakes and opposition? Will we live the kind of lives that are worth remembering? And will we be able to have enough integrity to love when people aren't at the level that we want them to be? And I think that for me, the hardest thing, one of the craziest things I heard in the last several years, I won't say who the activist is, but if you're interested, it's a pretty famous clip. A legendary civil rights activist was asked, he was asked, he said he was asked, what is the hardest thing about being an activist and minister? And their response was, you would think it's the police brutality. You would think it's the death threats. You know, you would think it is trying to do righteous things with little resources. He said, but the hardest thing that I have to do is preach the funeral of an irrelevant Negro. That I have to try to speak over your life when you haven't done anything for the advancement of your community, your people, your family, or anybody. And I think that the thing that the reason I talked about Howard Thurman is that it's all about living a life that's worth people remember and being able to be a part of a grand tradition, not just individuals. I think what Barry said resonated with me in a mighty way, because I think we're trained to be individuals. We're trained to think of ourselves as people who have to dress a certain way, think a certain way, move around in the world a particular way, but we're not really connected to the best of who we are, who we have been, and thinking about living lives that can be foundational to people being able to stand on our shoulders, right? I think it's that, getting back to that African proverb, Ubuntu, I am because we are, right? And being able to be foundational pieces so that we can reach back. Because if Harriet Tubman just ran and never came back 19 times to the South, we wouldn't still be talking about it, right? And so at the end of the day, there have been many people who've been way more wealthy than her, but we'll forget those people. Only the people who allow their lives to be foundational to promote a grand legacy last. And I think that's the challenge to all of us.
I've heard purpose. I've heard individuality. When we look at ourselves in the Imago Dei, and the Imago Dei is the image of God, what does your imagery look like when it comes to you being a creation of God? Barry, I'm gonna start with you.
I would say a reflection of my soul. And that looked different at different points in my life. And I would hope, you know, as I grow, as I mature, you know, as I become, strive to be the person that I was born to be, you know, that it would, you know, look better and better. But, you know, I have my moments. And so if this microscope is constant and it never takes its eye off me, you know, you're going to see me, the full spectrum, you know. Right now, I would say, you know, every time my son comes around, I'm just, you know, happy. I'm a little anxious. I can't wait to play with him before he goes to bed. You know, but I'm also winding down from work. Then I also just like, my brain is spinning right now because of this conversation we had. And so, you know, but I would say, you know, different, like, you know, it's hard to answer that, but what I would hope for is that, you know, people would look at me, or I would be able to look at myself and be content.
Okay. Chris Randall.
Now, you know, you're not about to send me right after him. Okay, all right, that's cool. It's fine. We know you don't really like me like that. That's cool. I think it's interesting because I think I hear that as a sociological and a political question. I think that it's seeing the beauty in ourselves and seeing the beauty in our communities. One of the things that kind of strikes me about, because one of the things, a few years ago, we had a debate topic that was about social welfare questions, but one of the topics was gentrification. And it's funny because one of the authors we read said, the thing about gentrification is a neighborhood that the ones who were there were traumatized by. Somebody came in, invested money, and created a paradise without them. And I think that the hardest thing is at first we have to accept that we are beautiful and intrinsically valuable to ourselves and God first as a creation. Minister Farrakhan once said, if you could, instead of using the N-word, next time you pulled out a gun on one of your brothers, say brother first and see if you can still do it. Right? And it is understanding the connectivity of each other and the divinity in each other. And I think understanding that divinity would alleviate a lot of the problems we have, and particularly as it relates to us degrading ourselves and each other. So
Chris Lynch.
I'm really loving these responses too. For me, what it looks like for me when I look and see.
Sorry to cut you off, Chris. Can you turn your mic up a little bit? You're a little hard to hear.
Don't know if, let me see.
That's better. That's better.
Okay. So for me, what the reflection looks like to me is a reflection of hope. I say that because throughout my journeys, I've been given a lot of, I don't want to say criticism, critiques, but compliments that, like my mom used to always tell me, no matter what you're doing or what you think you're doing, somebody's always watching you. No matter where you at, somebody's always watching you. So that resonated with me when I did my prison sentence. Because sure enough, somebody somewhere always has something to say to me about how I conduct myself, the things that I'm into, my movements around prison, and they were all positive. Even for even though I was in there, I got in a little trouble in there too still, but the way I walked and carried myself outshined even all of those, not even all, but it wasn't that much negativity going on. But like even the nonsense I was doing, the good outshadowed that. So what people when they came to me, they would say like, bro, I really want to get in that position that you in too. Like you in here, you got this smile on your face, or you in here and you pursuing your education, or the way you walk up and down the catwalk, like like you ain't even in prison. Like so those things will uplift me, and I had to take note that I'm just really like inspiring people unbeknownst to myself. And I really appreciated that the amount of people that came and told me, because a lot of people, they'll take note of things like that and they'll take a back seat and won't ever say anything. So therefore, if they never said anything, I wouldn't have known that this was something that I was gifted with, to be able to harness it and keep me on the straight and narrow at that too. Because now that I know people watching me, even when I think they're not, I have to make sure I'm stepping accordingly because somebody's watching somewhere. Because look at me. I grew up in the hood, grew up in East Orange, New Jersey, on a very violent gang block, not a gang member, but like look at the chances and opportunities I've been given. So if somebody like me come from where the people we trying to relate to come from, and we trying to get them to be where like the people we trying to guide them to be like are where they are, they got people like me to make those connections. And Barry and Tyreek and Chris, like we've been where they at. So it's not impossible. What we telling them or showing to them or trying to teach them is not impossible, because they have examples of people that's been in their situation, that's made it out and gotten off to a better position in life. So there's hope for me.
Pastor,
Tyreek.
no, we have a question in the chat. Just remind me.
Tyreek.
Thank you. Well, it's definitely a huge benefit in going last. I'm gonna take something from Barry and from both Chris's. I mean, when I think of it, it's my heart. And as I heard Barry and both Chris's talking, it reminded me of a song. I forget who sang it. Like, take me to the King. I don't have much to bring. My heart is torn to pieces, but it's my offering, right? So, like, sometimes many of us who haven't had the mantle or don't even realize that we have an assignment or feel like that we don't have a purpose, we don't even realize it, right? But I want for those who are in positions of power, who already recognize that they have the mantle, who are already doing the work, to realize that sometimes all I got is me. If I'm banging, if I'm getting high, if I'm doing these things. So like, and then I looked up, Corinthians, again, the love chapter, right? Like, what is love? It's kind, it's patient, it endures, it does not boast, it does not brag. And I just want people to just see my heart, right? Now, like Barry said, there was a time based off of when you knew me or looked at me, you wouldn't even know where my heart was at, right? Although I said it, my actions and my decision-making didn't even really show it. But it's important to be gentle, right? Because when you look at our brothers and sisters, and when you study epigenetics and trauma, and we really hurting, right? And sometimes we can't even recognize our purpose because the people who have the mantle ain't even fulfilling their assignment. And I gotta say that because I don't want to be doing our people a disservice, because they so busy looking at my actions, right, and not looking at my heart and forgetting where they came from. So I just wanted to just be like gentle, right? And when we doing it, if you're gonna look at me and you're gonna look and see the God in me or through me, I just want you to know that like it's about love, it's about kindness, it's about patience, especially if you're trying to pass the mantle to African American men. You can't pass that mantle and not be kind and patient and loving. You think that we just, I live on Wayne right in between Hawthorne and Nah. I just can't go out there and be like, yup, God gave me a message. Here go the mantle, y'all figure it out. Without being present, without showing up. And this is why many of us have pushed some of those things away, because the way that it was delivered to us. And I'll just close with this, to just be an open messenger, and not just a messenger and not just a doer, but most importantly, a hearer. Right. My heart.
How do we get young men to pass the mantle of God and still maintain the reality of being an African-American man in America?
I'm not going after Barry. I'm going.
Barry,
No.
go.
No. So I have a question. Like, I mean, I know a lot of young men who's passing the mantle. So like, I need that, because it feels like that question is coming from somewhere. So I would ask the person, if they're still listening, could they please be more specific of, who these young men are talking about? Because I know a lot of young men who's, carrying that mantle.
Okay. So being that, how do we get young men to pass the mantle of God and still maintain the reality of being an African-American man in America? Because being an African-American man in America is not easy, because everything we're up against, everything we're put into, everything that comes at us, we step outside our door. And the minute we step outside our door, how do we maintain that reality?
Okay, Barry.
I would say.
You said it right. You said a mouthful. That was a mouthful. That's it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's understanding your greater purpose. I think it's understanding your greater purpose, and like, just understanding like a human being, because it's like, so one, for African-American man, like, some of them are against religion just because of, our history, and how they use, God or like religion to enslave us, right? But I think, and that's something I struggle with. And so what I begin to understand is that like they're human just like me. And because they use God and religion in the wrong way, it doesn't mean that's what it is. Like we still, we got family members who are very, very, very Christian and you go to church every Sunday, and like they're the most judgmental people you'll ever meet in your life. They gossip more than the non-church, you know what I'm saying? But it's like they're human. So I just think like understanding your greater purpose and saying like the sacrifice that we got, because if somebody didn't sacrifice for us, you know what I'm saying, we wouldn't be able to have this conversation. Or maybe we would, because at one point, the only thing that we could legally read was the Bible.
Okay. Tyreek.
Yeah, so I got to follow behind Barry. I don't want to lose my thought. So I seen it. So in the chat, I think, Barry, they also said, and maintain their swagger, right? And because I'm previously incarcerated, because I'm from the an impoverished urban community, one of the things I put when I was like, when Barry asked for more context, I would ask, right, like, to whose standards and expectations, right? Because my grandmother was Christian, straight up, like Monday prayer night, Tuesday choir rehearsal, Wednesday, but everything. But I do my work with my mantle. I might do it in the A&R. I might do it at North Sanitation. I might do it in Northern State. So a lot of times I think that like many of us are already doing God's work and maintaining swagger, but people can't see it because the veil ain't been lifted, because they're looking at it from their own expectations. Like when I realized that God had put me on an assignment, I was like, well, damn, excuse my language. I like what I went to prison for and had to spend 4.5 years for, nobody gets that time. And I had my own conversation and God said, because I'm taking you somewhere where you're going to have to empower some people. And I'm like, I could have got probation, PTI, 4.5 years. And if I wouldn't have been in that space or had that experience, I wouldn't have been on my assignment. And I think that we got to be careful because, and now with social media, Pastor, like, you see that there was a time where you couldn't wear an Adidas sweatshirt. They like, he ain't no preacher. He better not have no nice house. He robbing the people. But now people are like people are seeing certain things and saying, wait a minute, like Barry said, you're human too. I used to think that and I share this with Director Stroye, I used to think that if I had like my pants sagging or my hat backwards, like that was a backwards demon, right? And God don't like that. And I'm going to hell if I curse. And then I was like, wait a minute, that's not goddamn true. Excuse my language. I started reading the Bible. I'm like, everybody he used, murderers, hoes, killers, dealers. Hold up. Let me get this mantle and let me go rock out. But the way I articulate my message is in a different way than some people might not understand it, because I'm doing it the way that God got me doing it. And some people can't understand. They like, oh, you manipulate and you use and you ain't not. That's the way that God gave it to me. You get what I'm saying? So that's how I'm giving it up, if that makes sense.
Tariq, I'm gonna pray for you, especially because you got a little something with you, and God got something more for you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Christopher Lynch.
Yeah, Tariq said a lot, and I agree with a lot, as did Barry. There's a scripture in the Bible I've been searching for it. I found it once before, and then I wrote it down somewhere, and I can't find it again. But to Tariq's point, God uses the people that we'll say are kind of like undesirable to show his might and his power, to show his presence. Because if God can make somebody like us succeed and shine and overcome, what could he do for you? So in the description I was looking for, it was something like
The song that was.
Excuse me, Mr. Randall. Let Christopher Lynch say what he's got to say, please. Thank you.
I won't be too much longer, bro. So it ran something to the effect that if I gotta be a robber, I'm gonna be a robber, so long as I can win that person's soul. If I gotta run this race with you, I'm gonna run this race with you, so long as I can win that soul. If I gotta be a thief, I'm gonna be a thief, so long as I can win that person's soul. So he uses various people. Now, how do we pass this mantle? Like, I agree as well with the brothers that mantle's been passed. It's just not being broadcasted enough about the good things that's going on in the communities. Because working alongside with these programs that I'm aligned with currently, there are so many other communities and nonprofit organizations that are taking place and trying to change lives and bring the young, put the young children right back on track where they're supposed to be. But it's not being praised about enough. And what I would say, coming from a different perspective, is that we have to restore the value. Nobody sees the value in what it is that we're trying to pass down. We didn't want to see the value because we was too focused on being fly, chasing girls, getting money. you know? So we didn't want to see the value until the responsibility started piling on. Now we got to pay bills. Now we got kids. Now we in trouble with the law. So now we got to square up. We got to shapen up. Now we understand that our actions affect those around us. So what does it mean to restore the value is nobody really cares much about what goes on in the what happened in the past. We just spoke about if Harriet never came back. So like understand and appreciate what was laid before you. And once you have a firm appreciation for those that came before you, now appreciate what you can do, what you're capable of, and who you can reach from your own capacity to carry forth the will of God to further develop the kingdom even further. So if we can restore the value and see, like, show these children or these young men and young women what it means and how valuable it is to know what it is that we're trying to pass down, then they'll understand it. Because right now they don't understand it. A lot of them don't understand it. They don't want to understand it. And it's also about the delivery. I agree with that as well. I'll leave it there.
All right, Mr. Randall.
I don't have much because it's cool, but I think the thing that I most agree with is what Tariq said about palatability. I don't think the thing that Joshua has to wrestle with when you read early in the text is that he realizes that he's talking to a generation that wasn't there for the first part of the struggle. And I think it's difficult when we think about, like, how do we package things in a way that works in certain communities? Because to be honest, the thing that was most beautiful about what Tariq said is that the place that it comes from. What I mean by the place that it comes from is, in order, when you look at Jesus's teaching style, right, it was specific to the community that he was from. Right, he taught in a way that the people he represented most could understand. And so for me, that palatability is most important. And the other level of it is you got to be authentic and honest about who you are. I think we start to lose our swagger when we start lying. You know, for my generation, it's like when you heard a rapper who was pretending to rap about a lifestyle that they never led, even if they never told you that it was a lie, you could feel it through the music. You could, as you were listening, you went, no. And they could have been better served just giving an authentic representation of who they were and what they experienced. And that would have resonated further, right? It's kind of like that movie CB4, right? It's the joke, right? You're a pretender. And I think the only way to maintain swagger is to be an authentic representation of yourself. And until we can really affirm that, and then make our own stories more palatable, because the thing that stuck out most for me, you know, with you, Pastor Stroye, was how honest you were about from whence you came. What was it that pushed you into the lane to be the man that you are right now? And if you had not been authentic about that, you had spoken to me at a level where you were high and mighty, and I've been perfect all my life, I've been with the Lord all my life, and I've been walking the same way all my life, I ain't never done anything ignorant, foolish, or any of that. That would not be palatable to me, right? Because that takes away, as the other Chris said about hope, that takes away my hope because I'm not perfect. And that will make you a self-righteous bigot that I wouldn't trust.
So I'm gonna give you a little bit of background about myself. I was given a mantle at 12 years old. And the covering was for me to go into the ministry. But my elders thought that and saw fit that they would say that I was not ready. And being at a young, tender age and loving and desiring God and the passion for God, wanting to serve God, my mantle was torn. And then I was broken. And in being broken, I cast my eyes not towards the hills from which cometh my help cometh from the Lord. I vindicated myself by not wanting to partake in God because of man. And I left God. We often hear the story about the prodigal son and how he wanted his inheritance and how he wanted to leave home. But it wasn't until he had to eat with the pigs that he realized that there was a better place for him. What I would say to you as men of the next generation, that God has taken you through the furnace and he has redefined you better than silver and gold. It is not that you don't believe in God. It is the things that are the deterrent of what has happened in your life to cause you to separate from your very imago Dei, your image. And God is restoring your very image. And in restoring your image, the legacy continues, the assignment, the responsibility, the accountability, the crossing over with the next generation. You are the Joshuas of the next generation. And what you do today reflects what tomorrow will look like and become. The last question I will pose to you, gentlemen, and it's here, and I'm going to read it to you. How did you resolve being betrayed by another African-American man and not carry it to the next generation, if applicable?
Quick and simple. So for me, I just had to apply that lesson about forgiveness. Forgive and forget. If we big enough to tell somebody else who's venting to us about a situation that they dealt with a person, to forgive them and forget, if we can see from the outside looking in that it really wasn't that big of a situation, why can't we ourselves put to practice forgive? You know, Jesus forgave me for all the stuff I've done. People that I've been around in my life forgave me for things that I've done. So I'm no bigger than the rest to say that I nobody deserves my forgiveness. So forgiveness.
Tariq?
So before I give my example, I'll just say something short, right? So I think that in order to not pass it to the next generation, we have to be healed, right? And we need those transferable skills on how to properly cope, grieve, and in social work, they teach you how to emotionally respond, especially being a Black man in an urban community that we come from. And I'll just give one example on, I was out one day. I said, excuse me to a brother. And he smacked my drink out my hand. He said, mother effort, put your hands on me. And when the man, my boys was like, yo, what's good? You want? Like, nah, man, I just want all of us to make it home tonight. Because some of the things, I mean, like me and Barry, we was on the phone for 4 hours today, right? Just unpacking and peeling back some of those things because we got a lot of hurt and pain and a lot of stuff because we can't cope with it, right? We respond in those ways. And in order to not pass it to the next generation, because that night, like Paz, you know, nights like that can go any doggone way. Like, because we ain't healed. And I think that in order to, like me and Barry always say, Barry said this last week, and I'm gonna stop right there. Barry said that all it takes for one person in our families, whether it's a mother, the father, for one person, Big Mama gone, a lot of my grandmothers gone, you know, but it just takes for one person to say, no, not mine. No, we gonna stick down and buckle down and be the Harriet Tubman and be the Elijah and be the Moses. But, you know, somebody I got 6 kids, right? Like, so I gotta buckle down. And then we won't pass it to the next generation, that trauma, that pain. So I hope that that next brother will be like, you know what, my fault, man. Nah, nigga, hey, King, what's going on, my brother? What's up, man? I love you. And it becomes a domino effect when you heal. I look at things differently now. I mean, before I used to have a drink and I'd be like, oh, I want to just tear everything up. Now I can sit back and laugh. What was the difference? It was the emotional state and space I was in, how I was responding to things, you know. And when you hurt and broken and being intoxicated or under the influence of anything, TD Jake said, if you want to know how your heart feels, listen to what come off your mouth or off your tongue, rather. And once we heal that heart, man, love will be passed down. Not maximum mandatory sentence, not probation. You know what I mean? Like the fruitful things will be passed down. So that's it for me.
Barry?
Love my brothers, man. I really do. But I'm gonna have to disagree with y'all, man. I'm gonna say, like, for me, I don't think it was the African-American man that betrayed me. Now I understand we have to have personal accountability. And I think with all those things that, you know, Chris and Tyreek, that was already said, just period. Like, I don't disagree with that. I just don't think like that we were portrayed by who we think we were portrayed by. Like, you know, in the history, like, you know, can explain that, like, you know, a lot better than I can with my statement. But in order for that to not pass to the generation, I think, you know, it was said already, you know, but I also think it's that piece about, you know, knowing your history, and you'll understand, like, you'll be much more forgiving, you know, of your brother. It doesn't mean you got to agree with him, you know, but you'll be much more understanding of where they're coming from, you know.
Okay. Mr. Randall?
Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I know I'm surrounded by a bunch of men from New Jersey, but I'm from Baltimore. I-95 is a long strip of road, I'll say that. But the thing that I think I agree most with, but I think both with Tariq and Barry, I think I'm somewhere in the middle. Amos Wilson's book, Black on Black Violence, kind of talks about how our societies are structured to create conflict, for sure. But I think the thing that is most difficult is, and what's nuanced about Black oppression that is unique in some ways to other forms of oppression for people, is we never see the hands that structure the environment, that put us in a place to have the interaction, the negative interaction with somebody who looks like us, right? So by the time Tariq and I get into an argument in 2022, what put us in that place is what happened in 1619, or what happened in place in 1960, whatever, or why we're in this community feeling this level of pain, feeling this level of dispossession and marginalization, or whatever it is. And I think the thing that I most agree with is that when you own that you are your own humanity, like Tariq was saying, you own your own humanity, and you speak to that pain that's inside you. And typically for young men, I think it is really scary because we're usually hurting from the little boy in us. Somebody traumatized the baby boy, it almost brought me to tears when I saw Barry holding his son, because a lot of us have never experienced that. Never really felt that level of affection from another man. And so when we think about it, it's owning those years and years of trauma. And it is not owning that, not understanding it, not having a knowledge of history, self, or environment that makes it so it's so easy for us to be problematic and belligerent toward each other. And I think that is the way, in order to make sure it doesn't go to the next generation, is to own it in ourselves, right? Find as many ways in terms of training and therapy and all of those things that can help us name the thing that hurts us. Because for me, the most phenomenal moment in Jesus' ministry is when he goes to the man in the graveyard that's possessed by the demon, and he forces the demon to tell him his name. Once you name something, you have control over it, and you can cast it out. But until then, it has control. And so for me, that's one of those things that I think is most that's most necessary is owning our own pain, owning our own historical trauma, and also being able to name it so that we can help deal with it in a healthy way so that it doesn't become transferred.
Okay, so I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out and thinking it not robbery to be here. And I'm going to say a short prayer, and then I have one final comment. Gracious Father, we thank you, God, for how you've allowed us to come together as African-American men and hold a conversation about Joshua's journey in the next generation, how we as African-American men can begin to uplift one another, encourage one another, and be a helping and guiding light to all men across this globe, this continent, that we can overlook ourselves and our individuality and begin to cover one another. Lord, thank you for this time and this hour. In the name of the Father, Son, and the precious Holy Ghost. And in closing, I would like for you to never, ever have pastime paradise.
One more time, Pastor.
And spending most of life living in pastime paradise. And spending most of life living in pastime paradise. And wasting most of time, Lord, but it's not on the high. And wasting most of things in the living. Ignorant soul is free. Tell me who I am. So come to me. I'm in need of help. Are you and me? Dissipation, isolation, isolation, segregation, dispensation, isolation, exploitation, new sensation, mutation, creation, revelation to the evils of the world, and spending yourself life living in future paradise, and spending yourself life living in future paradise, and looking in their minds for the day.